is dedicated to strengthening the places we call home, but they can't do it alone. Learn more at protectmypublicmedia.org.
Hey, I'm Keith Spiro from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is singer Tank Ball from Tank and the Bangas. Tank, you're known for your amazing hairstyles at Jazz Fest. Is there any way I could possibly replicate one of those hairstyles myself?
You cannot.
There you go. We'll talk about that and much more this week on Let's Talk.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams. We're going to try to get to all the home teams. It is draft night for the New Orleans Saints. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, Zurich Classic, all on tap for us. Got a great panel for you tonight. Guerry Smith of NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and also, again, the Wave Report. Mario Jerez, who is, again, the voice of the New Orleans Pelicans Spanish broadcast, also working with us over at 106.7 The Ticket. Also, again, working with another radio station as well. Both those gentlemen on the panel tonight. Looking forward to having, again, strong opinions and a good time this evening. Hope you stick with us for the entire hour. All right, we'll get started here with, again, these gentlemen telling you a little bit about what they're involved in. Mario, why don't you go first off the box here.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Eric. As you said, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints on the radio, as well as the Pelicans. Season just wrapped up for them, obviously. Doing some producing work for 106.7 and some other stations, as you said. And just got to cover a Super Bowl, which was really cool. As you said, this is a really fun time of the year in sports. We have a lot going on, so looking forward to breaking all that down with you here today.
Keep an eye on Mario, I'm telling you. Again, he'll be on the airwaves very, very soon on your radio, TV, etc. So keep an eye on Mario for sure. Guerry, welcome back to the show. Gary's with me every single Thursday normally, again on the radio show. Does a great job, strong opinion on all sports, and again, covers the Tulane Green Wave. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us all about it.
I work for NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, covered the Tulane beat. Used to cover the Saints a little bit for them. Don't do that much anymore, but do cover the Saints for the Associated Press for their home games still. And then I have my website, The Wave Report, affiliated with Rivals.com, TheWaveReport.com, Tulane.Rivals.com. So beautiful. I've got my hands full.
If you're a Tulane fan, you've got to subscribe to The Wave Report. All that information coming to you first. And of course, check out Guerry again online and of course in the paper as well. All right, guys, Saints on the clock at 9. Mickey Loomis had his press conference yesterday. Not a lot of information as normal per Mickey Loomis. We've got a couple of things we'll talk about a little bit later. Let's talk needs first. 9 is a pretty good spot. Obviously, you're in the top 10 after coming off a tough season. Picking 9th in pretty much every round gives you an opportunity to restock your roster. With that said, Mario, I'll go with you first. most people believe there are needs at every position, but at 9, where do you think the strongest needs are, and where do you think they will go?
Sure. So before anything, quarterback's going to be a part of the conversation, especially coming out of that press conference yesterday when Mickey Loomis did not answer the question when they asked him, is the starting quarterback on the roster right now? So you could definitely make the argument that is a need, right? That being said, I would argue that, and a lot of people, maybe the coaching staff would agree with me, would say that there are bigger needs. And I think this team needs to continue to build in the trenches. A lot of people that cover these kind of things and that evaluate quarterbacks think that this isn't a very strong quarterback class. So if you can get a surefire left tackle or a pass rusher to replace a Cam Jordan who hasn't been as productive the last few years, or even a tight end with Tyler Warren and some really good people at that position coming out, if you can get a premium player there, and as Mickey said yesterday, lock down a position for 8 or 10 years and have a stable player there, I think that needs to be the ultimate need. So the short answer would be just take the best player available.
Right. Gary?
I agree with that, and I have obviously, since I've covered college football my whole career, what I would like to see the Saints do is pick a guy who's actually been productive in college. Now, sometimes I don't know, there's a reason the draft is an inexact science. Sure. Sometimes the guys that have the great measurables and weren't productive turn out to be good players, but I think the odds hit you better if the guy's actually been productive. I think tight end's a bit of a luxury position, but Tyler Warren is a difference maker. I mean, he's really, really good. I happened to watch Penn State's game against USC last year, and that was one of the best single game performances I think I've ever seen. 22 catches, like 200 something yards. If he's available and they feel like he's the guy that could their best fit, but I think where they need to go, all things being equal, is defensive line, because that's where they've. For 5 years, from 2017 to 2021, the Saints were an elite run defense. Yes. And guess what? They were an elite football team for most of those years. For the last 4 years, they've gotten progressively worse, where they bottomed out this past year. They had their worst rush. They gave up 4.9 yards a carry. The only time I can ever remember worse was that 2012 team, which the Sean Payton suspension year, where they had one of the worst defenses in NFL history. Other than that, I couldn't find one that was worse. You can't win in the NFL if you can't stop the run. All things being equal, I think that's where they would be the best place for them to have gone. Yeah.
I agree. Again, to me, look, and I get the allure of Warren. Okay, and if he's there, he's going to be tough to pass up. Right. Especially now, hearing and we knew when Taysom Hill got injured, it was going to be a severe injury. Yeah. And of course, Mickey kind of alluding to that yesterday. Again, it's going to be a tough road back for him, especially at his age. Does he want to do it? Again, everything we hear is that he wants to come back. He's going to try to come back. But what type of player will he be if he comes back? And Warren could solve that issue for the Saints. It gives them another. I don't want to say he is a Taysom Hill type. In other words, in terms of getting back there and throwing the football, but again, he is a jack of all trades. But I have been consistent throughout the draft process that the Saints have to get better on the offensive and defensive lines. It doesn't matter who your quarterback's going to be. It doesn't matter, again, how great your skill position players are. If you cannot protect the quarterback, if you cannot stop the run on defense, you're not going to win. And, depending on, again, who falls to them at 9, I'm looking at, best available player, but I'm also, again, leaning toward, again, the best big man on the board. That's the offense or defense. Guys?
Yes. Well said. I agree. What you just said about the defensive line, Guerry, I think you can make the same argument about the offensive line.
Agreed.
And slowly but surely, they've been improving there, right? Fuanga last year was a good pick. He had a good rookie year.
Yes.
If you can get, the guy from Texas or Campbell out of LSU or another bookend to tackle, you have 2 good tackles. You have Eric McCoy, who's an elite center, and you're slowly building an elite offensive line, hopefully, which is why Kellen Moore was so successful in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator. And what I think, based on his interviews, based on his words, he's trying to build in New Orleans.
Right, no doubt. And of course, again, with the revelation yesterday that the Saints will pick up Olave's 5th-year option, they will not pick up Penning's 5th-year option. Again, how does that bode for Penning? Even though, again, Mickey Loomis said they love Penning. You love him, but you don't love him at $16 million, okay? They love Olave, but again, I do question giving Olave a $15 million contract for 1 year, coming off, again, the concussion situation he's had. I think that is something that, could come back to bite him later on. But when you look at where they are, to me, again, you might be able to move a guy like Penning inside. Okay, like they did with Becton in Philadelphia. Maybe you're drafting an interior offensive lineman, although that's a little bit high in that 9 in the first round to get an interior offensive lineman. But again, no matter what, I think you have to get better there, and I think you have to be again we're leery of overdrafting a quarterback. And even Mickey Loomis said that yesterday about overdrafting a quarterback. So let's talk about this class a bit if we could. Most people believe that Cam's going to go first overall. There's a lot of conjecture on who will be the second quarterback off the board. Will it be Shedeur Sanders? Will it be Jackson Dart? And where will they be picked? Are those two players worth picking them in the top 10 of the draft? Or are those guys, again, more the back end, teens, 20s, and meaning a team like the Saints would have to get back into the first round or fall back to get a player like that? Guerry, let me take you first. Your thoughts on the quarterback class, your thoughts on the top three, again, Ward, obviously Sanders, and Dart.
Yeah, I think Ward's pretty good. I mean, but he's not going to be available for the Saints, so let's throw him out. I'm not a big fan of the other two at all. And I don't consider myself a draft expert at all. It's not my wheelhouse, but I will say this. I've been pretty good I'm pretty good at watching college quarterbacks. Much better than I am at any other position. I've been like dead wrong on wide receivers multiple times on what they do. I've been pretty good. I go back my days when I was living in Florida. I was born in New Orleans, but I spent a lot of my adult time as a sports writer in Florida. I once wrote a column that Jamarcus Russell would be one of the biggest busts in NFL history when he was picked number one. And it somehow, this was really almost internet, and it somehow got back to some LSU people. And I was getting emails and besieged with telling me what an idiot I was and stuff like that. And then it kind of worked out that way. Shedeur Sanders had some good numbers. Colorado didn't really play well against the best teams they played. He got sacked a ton, and a lot of people blame their offensive line, but a lot of times it's the quarterback's fault when he gets sacked that much. Jackson Dart, my brother went to USC. I just happened to watch a lot of USC games. He was there as a freshman. Yes. I didn't like him when he was a freshman. At Ole Miss, I don't feel like anybody's going to put up big numbers in that system. I don't feel like he played great in the biggest moments at Ole Miss, and I didn't really like his ability to read defenses particularly. I not only don't think either one of them should be picked at 9, which Shedeur Sanders I guess could. I don't even think they should trade up in the draft, which a lot of people are speculating to get later in the first round to take Jackson Dart. Now look, it's an emergency situation at quarterback for the Saints this year with the Derek Carr news, but you just can't reach for a guy that you don't think can help you make the playoffs.
A franchise quarterback.
It has to be a franchise quarterback. I really don't see either one of those guys being that guy.
Mario, what's your take?
100%, and maybe they're just being kind, but the coaches have spoken highly of Spencer Rattler. In a world where Derek Carr can't play, I think they would prefer to beef up the rest of the team before potentially reaching on a quarterback. So you have to consider that before anything. As far as this year's class, I was telling you this before the show, and I've said it on your program, on others in the radio. I don't pretend to be a quarterback evaluator. I don't have successful hot takes like Guerry over here when it comes to Jamarcus Russell, but I can give an opinion, and my opinion is like his. I'm not super high on the class this year. I think Cam Ward is an excellent college quarterback. He showed that at 3 different stops. He won a lot of games, but I think he played against some not great defenses, and that's not going to translate so much to the NFL. With Jackson Dart, maybe this is a lazy take. A lot of people disagree, but I think he is a lot like Matt Corral, not just because he went to the same school and because he had the same head coach, but because I think he benefited a lot from the system at Ole Miss. And like Cam Ward, like Matt Corral, Snead, other Ole Miss quarterbacks, really good quarterback on the college level, not going to translate into the NFL. Shedeur Sanders to me is interesting. Obviously, it's a very polarizing player. Probably gets a lot of hate being Deion's son, probably gets a lot of unwarranted praise being Deion's son. That being said, I see a lot of good skills, really good arm. Yes, he takes a lot of sacks, but it speaks to his toughness that he gets up from those sacks and still puts up good numbers, right? So I think in an NFL system with some, I don't want to say better coaching, but I guess a more organized team, a better offensive line, an environment where he could succeed, I think he'd be a good quarterback in the NFL, but I still don't take him at number 9 if I'm the Saints.
What do you like about Sanders? What attributes do you like about it that you think will translate to the pro game?
Sure. His arm strength, number 1. I think it's a little underrated. I see some people knock him for that, but some of the angles where he makes these throws down the field, I really like that part of his game. And also just the mental toughness. I think you could say the same about Joe Burrow. And even at LSU early on, he took a ton of sacks, but he got up. He, avoided injury. Number 1, you got to be durable. And number 2, showed some serious mental toughness, took some big hits in a lot of big games and still produced, if not won those games for the Buffaloes. So that's what I like about Shedeur.
Dart's got incredible athleticism, okay, and Shedeur again is a guy that has incredible accuracy. Okay, those are 2 of their attributes. Wild card here, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. He, again, a lot of people have been really talking about him, again, maybe sneaking into the late first round, early second round. Your take on Milroe?
No, I just don't see it. Too inconsistent in college. If you're not consistent in college, you're in trouble in the NFL, because we see guys that are unbelievable in college. They play well in every game, and they're busts when they get to the NFL. There were games where Jalen Milroe was flat out awful. I mean, he got benched a couple of years ago for one game. Then he came back and played a lot better after that. Too many red flags to me with him to warrant. I mean, second round maybe for teams, but first round I don't see it with his inconsistency. Playing with, for the most part, not as much last year, but playing with elite talent before then.
Very fair, very fair. And I think a lot of teams will agree with Guerry, and he'll probably slide down the boards. But I guess that would be my hot take for this draft. I like Jalen Milroe.
What do you
I think his athleticism before anything. And you saw that against LSU.
Oh, yeah, he beat him by himself.
Exactly. Unfortunate for the fans down here. And to Gary's point, whenever he played bad, Alabama would always lose. But whenever they won, it was behind his legs and him running around and doing some Lamar Jackson-like stuff, right? And I think if he goes to a good environment, if he goes to a team where maybe he can sit back for a few years and refine his skills, become a more polished passer, I see a lot of talent there. To me, that is an intriguing player in this draft.
Let me be fair, because I was bragging on myself for a quarterback evaluation. I didn't think Lamar Jackson was going to be very good in the NFL, so that was a massive miss on my part there. So, and you do mention the athleticism. Now, Lamar Jackson is probably the greatest athlete to ever play quarterback in the history of football. And Jalen, he's a good athlete, but he's not that level. But your point is well taken. I mean, if I miss on guys, it tends to be those athletic quarterbacks that I don't think can pass well enough, but they do the other things so well it doesn't matter in the long run.
Right. Incredible athlete, rocket for an arm. Rocket for an arm. The thing is, again, the inaccuracy. That's the thing that's held him back. And again, the question is, can that be taught? Can a quarterback coach come in and work with his mechanics and make him a more accurate quarterback? That's the key to him, I think, whether he can have a successful NFL career. Because again, he checks the other boxes in terms of athleticism, arm strength, etc. Again, but to me, the biggest attribute for a quarterback is what Sanders has. Accuracy.
Exactly, and hopefully that can be taught to an extent. So people would argue, I guess, but with Milroe, I also like the mental toughness, because yes, he got benched a game against South Florida, but he came back and he played pretty well for Alabama, and he played through a lot of, I guess, kind of turbulence over there. You know, with Nick Saban, it being his final year as a junior, and then his first season under Kalen DeBoer, took some really bad losses, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, but had some really good performances, LSU and others. So definitely erratic, definitely inconsistent, but I see a lot of talent there.
And I'm on your accuracy train, but the other key factor is decision making, and that's why it's so hard to judge quarterbacks, because you can't really tell in college. The decision making is a heck of a lot easier in college than it is in the NFL. I mean, Drew Brees was one of the greatest decision makers, maybe the best decision maker we've ever seen, and you can't really tell from guys how they're playing in college on that front.
Guys, again, let's talk top three positions the Saints have to come out of this draft filling. I'll take you first, Mario.
Definitely offensive line and defensive line. I'd put both of them in the trenches. And third, I still think they need some work at wide receiver. And yes, this team has a lot of needs. You could say every position is a need, but the most glaring one to me is wide receiver. I mean, no disrespect to the guys they trotted out there last year, but you weren't going to win many games. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling looked like an all-star in that offense, and they bolstered a little. You know, you bring in Brandon Cooks. You hope for a healthier Chris Olave this season, who I'm really high on. He's been, you could argue, he's been one of the more consistent players on this team since he came into the league, but you still need to beef up that position. So I see a lot of talk about McMillan out of Arizona. There are some prospects there down the road with some later rounds. You can't waste those picks. You can't have any more A.T. Perrys, right?
Agreed.
You need to bolster the wide receiver position.
And I'll throw some shade on that. I'll give some disrespect, because I just mentioned you can't win in the NFL without being able to stop the run. You can't win with the wide receiver quality. The Saints were trotting out on the field last year. Now, part of it was injury, but to your point, the Chris Olave concussion thing is a huge concern.
It really is.
Because if you're prone to concussions, you're more likely to keep getting them in the future. And I agree, and a tight end would help them there too. To me, I'd say, I agree. Defensive line, offensive line, and I'd say receiving help are the three areas that they need the most.
I'm offensive line, defensive line, and cornerback. I think those are the three that are critical needs that they have to fill. Again, I love Alante Taylor, but I love him again at the slot receiver, at the slot corner, nickel corner, getting him close to the line where he can affect the line of scrimmage. I like Kool-Aid. I think again he could be a starting corner in the NFL, but I think again there's a void there in terms of depth and of course having another starter as far as that goes. Let's talk Derek Carr for a few minutes. Yesterday, and I will, Mickey Loomis talked about Derek Carr and saying again that they knew the situation, that he had a shoulder injury, that there was really no information. But he was looking for some clarity and would let everybody know again down the line again what was the situation there. It was tiptoeing around the obvious in my opinion. Though some people believe trade him. Some people believe, again, cut him, let him go. Saints have about $27 million of cap space right now. Letting Carr go in any capacity would cost them $80 million this year. It ain't happening. It ain't. Nope. Again, it's not. You've already got $31 million of Marshawn Lattimore that is going to be amortized over 2 years with a post-June 1st cut. Also, again, the same thing with Ramczyk with his retirement. They will spread that cap hit of about $23 million over 2 seasons. There is no other. There's no room here to be able to put Derek Carr's dead cap money in this year's cap. They utilize this cap money to open up cap space so they could sign players. So, to me, it is Derek Carr and the Saints coming together, kumbaya, working it out for this season, or it's Derek Carr on injured reserve for the season after maybe going through some type of surgery. Again, if it is true, again, that he needs his shoulder to be surgically repaired. What's your take? What's your take on what's going to happen with Derek Carr?
As ironic and kind of hilarious as it is, it kind of reminds me of the situation with Michael Thomas a few years ago when, according to the team, he wasn't honest with them, or there wasn't, enough communication around the injury, and he had to miss a lot of games and at times entire seasons when the team wasn't really expecting that. And like with Michael Thomas, you could argue that maybe some emotions are involved here. Derek Carr hasn't been around the team. He wasn't here for Mardi Gras. He wasn't here for the Super Bowl when everybody else affiliated with the team and no longer affiliated with the Saints was here. So I don't know what's going on. I'm not really privy to the situation, but you're looking at a situation where, as you said, it doesn't really make sense to cut him. It's very unlikely you'll find a trade partner for him. So you might just have to ride it out in a very awkward season and move on when it's time to move on, which will be not this year.
Right.
Yeah, it's a mess. And look, I know Saints fans hate Derek Carr, and now they have a lot more ammunition. But this isn't his MO in the past. He hasn't done a move like this before. So I'd say, considering that both sides are to blame here a little bit, in that the Saints can be very heavy-handed when they try to force these contract restructurings on guys and tell them this is what something happened there, because Derek Carr, how's he helping himself in this situation? Because I don't. From what I've heard, I don't really believe the injury is severe. Let's put a hypothetical that's not going to happen. Let's say the Saints traded him to the Steelers. I bet his shoulder would be magically real fast. So there's a disconnect between the two. Now, I've also heard elsewhere that it's irreparable. There's nothing irreparable in relationships in the NFL. Yes, it would kind of be a mess. He'd get booed probably the second he stepped on the field at the beginning of the year by fans, but they can find a way to work this out. Am I confident that that'll happen? No, but they don't. Neither one of them have options really at this point. They've got because, like you said, they can't cut him, and I don't think they're going to find a trade partner. No. And so on both sides they've got to come to some agreement.
Yeah, if he's healthy.
And if he's healthy, if it's a legitimate injury, that's a different story.
Right. Sure. I'm sure you both guys saw or at least heard Mickey Loomis's comments. Your take on him yesterday about Derek Carr?
Like I said, I think it was pretty telling. You can argue that it wasn't a very big deal what he said, but he also didn't say, we're in lockstep with him. We're looking forward to him leading the team. Like, he left the door open for sure. So I think that's intriguing, and there's a lot of scenarios at play. Like Guerry said, maybe Derek Carr still plays and this injury ends up being phony. Maybe Spencer Rattler ends up fielding a better team next year as a quarterback. Maybe they do reach, quote unquote, in the first round for a QB or take one in this draft. Like, there's just a whole lot of unknown there, and I think Mickey Loomis's comments yesterday kind of solidified that.
Right.
Yeah. Mickey wasn't going to say much on that.
No,
he could.
He tried to talk around as much as he could.
He was right. You can't before the draft in this situation. That's something to address after the draft.
Right.
And so I don't.
But he knew walking into that room that was going to be the number one question.
Yeah, I don't really. But no, the way that thing broke, clearly there's nothing good between their relationship now, because that's something that you cannot not tell the team about.
Right.
That it's not like this is a new injury, even if it is legitimate now. So it's a bad situation.
As far as the restructure goes, I mean, all NFL teams have the right to restructure contracts, and again, it's written into the contract, right? Yep. And then the other thing is, Carr knows that situation. He knew again they were going to use his base salary last year, as they did. They could have gotten out of the deal this year and walked away. But again, they restructured his deal last year to open up cap room. And again, they did it again this year. That was always the plan when they signed him to a $150 million deal. $100 million guaranteed.
Not bad.
Okay? $100 million guaranteed. So they knew they were going to utilize his salary to open up cap room as they were trying to get out of this quote unquote cap hell. So again, I don't know how Carr might be upset one way about that. And the other thing is, if he truly is upset, and there's been some rumors out there about the Saints possibly drafting a future quarterback, what does that say about his psyche? What does that say about, again, his inability to be able to handle competition from an incoming college quarterback? Is that the guy you want leading your team?
Yeah, I'll just say on the restructuring, I think it's the communication issue about them not there being no communication between the sides. That's clearly has been an issue.
100%. And if that is the case, everything you just said, then for sure that is showing some thin-skinnedness. And Scott Shanley and others have been very critical of that. And honestly, that's surprising. To me, was Derek Carr, if that is the case, was he really that beloved in Oakland? Like, did you really not see that much criticism?
He wasn't.
Apparently he thinks that he was. And was he really that, sure of his position every single draft? Like, they weren't going to draft the quarterback based on the tape you put out? Like, that seems a little out there, right? And definitely unprofessional behavior, if that is the case.
Yeah. I will say this, I was encouraged by a couple of things that Mickey Loomis said, and you got to always try to read between the lines with him. He talked about the defensive structure changing, so again, they're going to change their prototype and what they're looking for, finally. Also working with Moore, the head coach, Kellen Moore, to try to find, to try to see what he's looking for in terms of, again, the player he wants to be able to coach, offensive philosophy, what his draft philosophy is, and trying to try to morph that into one, which was encouraging to hear as well. Either one, guy.
I think that we talked about it before, but he really wants to build the trenches. He's coming out of a situation with Philadelphia, and he's been very candid with that in interviews. We interviewed him on the Spanish television station. He's told a lot of people that even though he was a quarterback, he believes that games are won from the inside out and on the trenches. So I think you're going to see a situation tonight where the Saints are very heavy with the offensive and defensive linemen. They potentially trade back and get more picks and get a couple of offensive linemen maybe in the early rounds, because that's how he wants to build the team.
Yeah, and again, pretty much was said, right? 9th overall pick. Loomis said you're looking for a position player that could be there for 8 to 10 years. To me, that doesn't scream skill position player. That doesn't scale. I mean, maybe quarterback, but that says offensive, defensive lineman. Those are the guys again that stick 8, 10 years, right?
And unless he was really throwing out a smokescreen, his comments on the quarterback were pretty clear.
Yes.
That, I mean, why would he come out and talk about how you don't reach on a guy that you don't think is your guy? Why would he say that if they were real? I mean, his history they haven't been a team that really did the huge smokescreens in terms of lying about where they were going in the past. So I agree. I'll be very surprised if they don't follow Kellen Moore's lead on that and build from the inside out.
All right, guys. Final question on the Saints before we move on. Do you anticipate them, first of all, trading back, which is something they've really never done under Mickey Loomis? Try to acquire more picks. 9 picks in this draft. What is it? 4 picks in the first 131 or something like that. So try to acquire more picks in the top 130. Maybe possibly, again, acquiring those picks to be able to move back into the late first round to get a quarterback. I've said this on the radio show. I think I've said on this program as well. To me, if you're drafting a quarterback, you want to draft in the first round because you want that 5th-year option. You want to get a chance to hold on that guy for the 5th year for 2 reasons. One, because that guy is probably still learning the game and still, trying to find his way as a quarterback. But again, you don't want to have to, if you have to pay that guy, you don't have to pay that guy big quarterback money after his 4th year in the league. So that 5th year gives you a little bit of a break on, again, what you'll have to pay a quarterback. Do you think they'll trade back into the first round? Do you think that, again, they will trade back, as you mentioned earlier? How do you think that they will handle this draft?
I think it is a possibility, and I know that goes against Mickey Loomis' MO and against everything he's done the last 10 or so years, but I think not only do the Saints have a lot of needs on the team, but you do have some really quarterback-thirsty teams that might be willing to make that trade with you and trade back. Because, look, quarterback is a very high-risk, high-reward position. For every Josh Allen, you get enamored with his physical traits. There's like an Anthony Richardson type player as well, so it's just a really risky position.
It's possible, but I have not seen enough evidence that Mickey Loomis learns from his mistakes.
Right.
The history in the NFL shows that trading down works better than trading up.
Agreed.
But the Saints have always traded. They just don't do it, and I don't feel like I think he thinks he goes back to the past. He thinks what he does works. They have so many needs. It just makes sense to trade down if the right offer is there.
Yes.
I'm very skeptical about that actually happening.
Be interesting to say. It's going to be an interesting draft. It is one again. The Saints in 2017 turned the entire organization around to 3 7-9 seasons with that incredible draft in 17. They have the plethora of picks that they had in that draft, in this draft, with the ability to be able to stockpile talent. Hopefully they do it. Hopefully again they make the right calls in the draft. The future of the organization kind of hinges on it going forward. All right. We will take a break. Mario Jerez, Guerry Smith are our guests. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. When we come back, we'll talk Pelicans, LSU, and Tulane. All that on tap for us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Guerry Smith, Mario Jerez, our guest tonight. All right, let's talk some Pelicans. 21-61, horrible season. David Griffin out as Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations. Joe Dumars was hired this week. Had his opening press conference, which again, I thought was an interesting press conference. Look, I want to start by saying, Joe Dumars had a lot of success his early years in Detroit in terms of, again, being an executive there. Obviously, again, his career was a Hall of Fame career on the floor. The back end of his tenure at Detroit was not that good. A lot of misses in free agency, a lot of misses, again, when it came to the draft. With that said, he's had an opportunity to work with the NBA now, which he's had his tentacles with all 30 teams, seeing how they operate. He mentioned that in his opening press conference. He also talked about the fact that, again, he will have full autonomy. There are no mandates, again, to fire Willie Green or to trade Zion Williamson. He's going to take a look at what this organization is and going to make his own decisions on how the organization will go forward. So basically, he's been handed the keys to the Pelicans going forward. Says he's had individual conversations with all the members of the team, and he said his conversation with Zion Williamson was exceptional. And of course, he says his goals for this season is to build a culture of a team that can win every game going forward. All right. I'm not going to get into his whole press conference. I want to talk a little bit about the Joe Dumars hire and again, the thoughts there. As I said, the criticism has not been so much the hiring of Joe Dumars, it is the lack of a process to find the best possible candidate. Once again, the Pelicans/Saints organization, again, falls back on individuals they have a comfort level with, people they have a relationship with. In this case, it is Dumars. You work with the Pelicans, you do the games. Your thoughts on the hire?
Yeah, I think the process, it's very fair to critique, right? I think people are upset about the fact that when David Griffin was still running the Pelicans, people already knew that Joe Dumars was going to replace him after he was fired. Right. And the team has admitted as much. The team has admitted that he got friendly with Mickey Loomis and with Caleb Benson back when Dell Demps was still the general manager of this team. And he almost took over for him. And it looks like, based on what the team has said, that they had a handshake deal in place that said if it doesn't work out with David Griffin, you're going to run this basketball team. So I definitely understand the fans being frustrated. That being said, maybe it works out. He's coming into, I think, a somewhat favorable situation where the team is going to have a top 5 draft pick. You do have some young talent, unlike the Dell Demps teams. And, you know, you can build around players like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and hopefully have a pretty competitive team pretty soon. But you got to make some key decisions early on that are really gonna make a big difference going forward. Number one being with Willie Green. What happens with him? What happens if they get off to a bad start this season even? And what happens with Zion? Do you continue to hope that he finally gets healthy, or do you make a move there and finally move on from Zion Williamson? So a lot of questions for Dumars. I don't really love the process of how he was hired, if you want my honest opinion, but maybe it works out. The guy knows his basketball, and as you said, maybe he's picked up some new ideas working with the NBA.
Yeah, I'm not really, and I mentioned that on the radio show, I'm not really too concerned about the process because I think a lot of that, process a lot of time is window dressing. Teams have already made up their minds and they do go through the whole process, but then they pick the guy that they were going to pick anyway. I think that's just kind of, that's not always the case, but I think it's the case more often than not. I don't have a problem with that. His credentials are questionable in his whole career. Maybe he did have success early, but it could work out. To me, it's all gonna, whoever they hired, it's all gonna come down whether they're making the right decision on Zion Williamson. Because to his point, they have a lot of good talent on the roster, but that has to be talent. They need a superstar, and they need a superstar they can rely on. And Zion may give good interviews and all of that. He may have changed his work ethic and stuff like that. But the problem with him is his body. And I'm not talking about being that amount of athleticism in that size of body is an injury is waiting to happen. And that's what they have to decide. They have to decide that even if they have a focused, on-point Zion, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because if he can't, you have to move on.
And that's been my point. I'm not anti-Zion. Again, I look at him, and again, when he came out first overall, in 2019, my thought was, again, this guy is, from what the small sample size we saw do, this guy could be the next face of the NBA. But the problem is, again, first of all, his immaturity. Again, his inability to stay healthy has been a huge deal. But part of that, again, is not just his body type, but again, not staying in shape. But again, will the wear and tear that he's had in his first 6 years here in the NBA, and then again looking in the future, how can you count on him being healthy, and how can you count on him being the guy for you if he's averaging 30 to 45 games a year? It's just difficult. So again, as difficult as it might be to say we're going to let maybe one of one go to another team, can you, in the position you're in now, if you're Joe Dumars, say, you know what, I think I can get the most out of him, and maybe you can. But can you keep him healthy?
Yeah, very fair, and the answer has been a resounding no. And we've made this joke, not really a joke, this franchise is cursed. Like, I can definitely see a world where they move on from Zion and he starts playing 70 games a year for whatever team he's on, but he just hasn't been healthy. And you can, we could talk about his personal life, and I think he's grown up a little, but I would also argue that, he's still under 25 years old, and Google Anthony Edwards and some of his off-court escapades. Like, I don't think that's really impacted his on-court performance and his health as much as people think. But to Gary's point, the guy's just injury prone. He weighs a lot. He jumps in the air very high, and he's gotten hurt. He's been in the league 6 years, and he has never finished a single season on the court for the Pelicans. So the definition of insanity, right, is just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And so far, the result's been the same every time, and he has not been healthy.
And I think not this year, but last year was the real turning point for me, because he was doing the right things. He was playing incredibly well, and then he had a freak injury right when he couldn't. And that's the type of thing that even if he does all the right things, I think the body of work in the history says you can't count on it. And to his point again, it would look bad if they did move on from him and then he played a whole season, because Zion playing a whole season at that level is an elite. Top of the chart guy.
Agreed.
But I just you can't count on it at this point, and it's just, it leads to frustration over and over and over again.
And I think the only way you can keep him is if you have another star, that can carry this team if and when Zion is injured. And they haven't had that. Brandon Ingram couldn't do that. I don't know if Trey Murphy can do that. Again, if they get the first overall pick, can Cooper Flagg be that guy? Maybe he can. But again, I think that's part of the issue there. And then, of course, can this team mesh into a team that can be, again, a consistent winner? And it seems like, again, throughout the tenure with David Griffin, that the parts just didn't fit.
Exactly. And I think Willie Green, you can argue he's brought stability. You can argue he's the best coach in the history of the franchise just based on his win-loss record. But I see why a lot of people kind of want some new ideas because it seems like this group has kind of just hit a ceiling. I feel like a lot of people want to see what somebody else could do with a Trey Murphy or a Herb Jones or a Jordan Hawkins, who has been pretty much in existence.
Yes.
So that part of it, I think, is a little bit discouraging. But you are getting a top 5 pick, and hopefully that is something that could change your franchise for the better.
Yeah, and again, you can throw out this year, there's no coach in the history of basketball that could have dealt
Too
with
many
it. But what I've
injuries.
seen from Willie Green over the years is too much inconsistent performance when they were healthy. They've had really good moments, but then a clunker. And to me, I thought they would move on. I was wrong on that department. I think they should move on, but maybe he will turn out to be a guy that, if he has the right players, can get the job done.
Look, I'll say this. I do not like that a coach comes in, and even though he says there's no mandate, I know he has a relationship with Willie Green. It feels like, again, the situation with Griffin coming in and having to keep Gentry. It feels like, again, them buying the franchise and keeping Dell Demps on for 6-7 more years. To me, a new broom sweeps clean. And if you're going to bring in a guy like Joe Dumars, again, give him an opportunity to bring in again his people. Although, again, I will say his first move was not one I really agree with. Bringing in Troy Reaver, the former general manager of the Detroit Pistons, who really, again, had no success there, as his number 2. Again, Swin Cash, by the way, again, is leaving the organization as his number 2 is not something, again, I'm enamored with his first move as again, the head of basketball operations for the Pelicans.
100%. And that's why I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much rope Willie Green has once the season starts. Because if they get off to a good start, they're somewhat competitive, then okay. You kept the coach. They did not give you a reason to fire him, and things are going well. But if they start losing, and it's some of the same things, the same mistakes that you saw before, will Joe Dumars sit down with the players and make a change after the season starts? I think that's still a possibility. So Willie Green is safe for now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that his seat isn't still warm.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, if they choose to stay with Zion and he stays healthy and they don't get off to a great start next year, Willie Green's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, but again, you're delaying the inevitable, in my opinion. So we'll see. Here's the other part of this, and this is one. I mean, I'm listening to. I watched the press conference. Obviously, I heard. I mean, I read his opening statement that again when he got the job. And he mentioned a few things that what he's looking for in terms of a team. Disciplined team, built on toughness, smart decision makings, no excuses mindset. He wants to build that culture. Well, if he's going to build that culture based on the players he has right now, there's going to be some movement on that roster.
100%, and hopefully he does bring those old school philosophies, because it was a long time ago, but he did build some great teams.
Yes, he did.
He could sit down with an Yves Missi and be like, hey, I used to run a team with Ben Wallace on it, one of the best interior defenders in history. Here's how you can be like him. So hopefully some of that comes, but as we were saying a minute ago, the teams that he ran, especially recently, were not very good. So hopefully he picked up some modern ideas and some philosophies that can help his team look good today, like it did in 04.
And let's say this, what you did 10, 15 years ago doesn't even matter anymore, because the NBA is it's gone under a sea change unlike any other sport I've ever seen. Guys that were great post-up players in the past can't even find a role as a bench player in the NBA. It's become a total find open three-point shots league and have guys that can get your guys open three-point shots. So what he did in the past, the bigger point I think is, again, has he learned anything from his latest job that where he can adjust and move and go forward?
Yeah, and again, look, that was one of the things that Dumars talked about, right? He said how much the game has evolved, how quickly has it evolved? Positionless basketball, all the things that you mentioned. Look, Obviously, again, the first thing we'll find out again is again where they'll be in the draft lottery. Hopefully, again, the ping pong balls will fall their way and they can get a Cooper flag.
It's what they do best.
You know, and at that point, again, what are you going to do with Zion? Those are the two biggest things, obviously, that will happen first, and then we'll figure out which direction they'll go. Again, based on what on the comments he made, there will again, even though he says he likes his core pieces, if his culture is being built on again toughness and decision making, etc. Again, there's going to be some changes on that team going forward. All right, let's shift gears to college football. We're going to talk Tulane first. Big news for Tulane. They've been looking for a quarterback. We're going to find out from Guerry Smith if they found that quarterback today. They signed a quarterback out of the portal. Guerry, who is it?
What, Brendan Williams? I can't remember. I think Brendan Williams, quarterback from Iowa.
Right.
Iowa's notorious for having one of the worst offenses in the country. That's not on the quarterbacks only. He was a part-time starter there. He had a pretty good bowl game. But you're not getting a quarterback at this stage of the portal who's a proven guy, who's a big-time starter. If you're not in a Power 4 school, Tulane had to have another quarterback because they've only got two on the roster right now that are scholarship guys. He'll come into the mix. Their spring game at quarterback was a discouraging performance, but I'll say this: in the 4 practices before then, both of those quarterbacks, Donovan Leary and Caden Simonza, looked a lot better. Although I do put some stock when you have fans in the stands, and it makes a difference. And neither one of them had a good game at all in the spring, so they had to bring in somebody. It's going to be a wide open competition. There's going to be 3 guys. It hurts not for a guy coming in who hadn't been involved in spring at all to come in the fall and win the job. It's going to be an interesting situation to see how this shapes up.
Is this the final quarterback? Do you think they go and try to get another quarterback?
He said they might, but I think he probably won't because they do have a 4th quarterback that they moved to wide receiver during spring. I think it's Kellen Tasby, who actually looked really good at wide receiver now. Guys are all delusional, so he still thinks he can play quarterback. So I'm not 100% sure he's going to stay because he may. Good luck to him finding a team that'll take him as a quarterback. But he actually looked really good at wide receiver when he practiced there. So I think if he stays, I think they'd be willing to have those 3 guys and him as a possible guy that could move in a desperate situation.
Other needs that Summerall has to fill in this spring transfer portal.
He needs a cornerback because they're 2 starting. They lost all 3 of their best cornerbacks from last year, and they've lost a lot of kind of marquee guys from the past in the transfer portal. But the only one that really mattered was Rayshawn Pleasant, who left before the spring drill started. Because this guy, he was an unbelievable kickoff returner. He's just a great athlete. He was going to be a star. They have the 2 starting quarterbacks at the end of spring. One of them was a redshirt freshman who didn't play at all last year, and the other guy, Jaheim Johnson, was a backup all year long. And those are their 2 best right now. So they have to go in and find a cornerback. I think they need another offensive lineman after watching this spring. Now their defensive line was great. That's the strongest position on the team. Even though it's mostly new guys, they did an unbelievable job in the portal in the spring, bringing in those guys. There's a guy named Santana Hopper who came from Appalachian State. I'm predicting right now he's going to be first team all AC and his teammates are just raving about him. But I think they need a starting offensive lineman. They need a starting wide receiver. Again, they're returning top wide receiver is Bryce Bohannon. He had 123 receiving yards last year. They need to find somebody that can come in and be a starter. So those positions to me are the key spots.
Take LSU for us. Talk about LSU coming out of spring. Again, they had a top incoming class. They had the top class in the portal. Your thoughts on how they look coming out of spring, and do you think they will also dabble in this next portal?
I think so. I think they've already, to your point, they've been aggressive in the transfer portal, which number one was not really the case last year. I feel like they were kind of passive, and that's been compounded with Bryce Underwood no longer coming to LSU. It's opened up a lot of funds, and you've hopefully shored up some positions, especially in the trenches, like we were talking about with the Saints. And I'm excited with the high school class that's coming in, especially with Harlan Barry, the running back. back. I think the key for LSU season will be getting that run game going, and that'll be hard with what you're losing in the draft tonight, right? You had 3 years of Will Campbell and Emory Jones as each of your tackles, so definitely some questions along the offensive line. But if you can get a good run game going and get Garrett Nussmeier a dependable run game, that'll really open up LSU's offense, and hopefully they'll have a better season than last year.
Again, for both teams, obviously, again, having to deal with the portal, Brian Kelly now embracing that portal and doing such a great job with it. And of course, Summerall, since he got to Tulane, it's been remarkable with the portal.
Willie Fritz was a fantastic coach. There's no doubt about that, but he didn't do half the work in the portal that, John Summerall, it's unbelievable. It all started when he got Mario Williams last year. That's just a guy that wouldn't have even remotely considered Tulane in any other Tulane iteration that ever came along. John Summerall is a great salesman. He has a really good coaching staff, and he gets these guys to believe that they can come to Tulane and
well
win.
said. And I really respect that, because they got gutted in the transfer portal, and you had to replace some key guys with Mensa going to with Rayshawn Pleasant. He was a great player.
That was a tough one. We
used to interview Coach Summerall on my old radio show, and we made the joke that he was really unpleasant for opposing kickoff units. It seemed like he scored every single game.
And at cornerback, he started at cornerback, and they had a rotation of 3, and the 2 other guys might get drafted. They probably will be undrafted free agents that'll get into camps, but he was going against good competition, and he started as a young guy last year.
And to your point, already has brought in some really good players out of the portal. When you talk about Tyler Thompson, the quarterback who was at Oregon, when you talk about all the players he's brought in, so that's kind of life at Tulane. And so far, he's shown that he can manage it.
No, because he knows that's the only way they can win big. And look, Tulane's, they're one of the only teams ever to make 3 straight conference championship games. It's going to be tough for them to make a 4th one this year with they only have 5 returning starters on both sides of the ball, but he's addressing those needs in the transfer portal. That it's all going to be whether they can get these talented guys to gel, which there's no way to know until the season starts.
But he did a great job with it last year.
But they'll have enough talent that they'll be in. I had a former assistant coach under Willie Fritz came to spring practice one day and just stopped me and said that this was in 2019 and 2020. He said they would have killed to have the overall talent on the roster. He said that watching these guys run around, it looked nothing at all like they had in 2019 and 2020. So that's how much the program has raised just in the base of talent level.
Zurich Classic of New Orleans, round 1 starts again today. It is a 4-ball, best ball format. On Friday, it'll be round 2. That's foursomes, alternate shot. Saturday is again 4-ball back to best ball, and then again the final round is a foursome alternate shot. Again, defending champs Roy McIlroy and Shane Lowry, Wyndham Clark, Taylor Moore, the Fitzpatrick brothers, Matt and Alex, and Billy Horschel, and of course Tom Host. Billy Horschel, always a big favorite here in Louisiana. Guys, I won't get too much into again who wins, who doesn't, but again, I just want to ask you again. The Zurich, it struggled for a long time, and then they went to this team format, and it seems to have rejuvenated the tournament. Again, not only New Orleanians flocking to the tournament, the players seem to love it. Your thoughts?
I think it's great for the city that Rory's coming in as the defending, not only the defending Zurich champion, but also just winning the Masters. Like that's big time for New Orleans, and keeping the sponsorship is big time. I know we live in a very capitalistic society, and you see that kind of thing a lot. People don't always love the brands, but keeping the Zurich name, that's significant.
But 2029, is that what it is? 2028, that has been extended now, so that's a great call.
Yeah, big news. And Rory's back in town defending his title, also going to have the green jacket on him, hopefully, so very good for the city.
Yeah.
This is why it's a good idea not to solicit my opinion sometimes, because I have no interest in the team concept. To me, golf is an individual sport, and when they said they were doing that, I was like, it was the best move they ever made by miles, because it was just they weren't getting good fields, and they were never going to get good fields because of where the tournament is.
Right.
They've got Rory McIlroy wins it last year and wins it. I mean, I was 100% wrong in what I thought about that, because it's been a home run for this tournament.
I'm with you too, Gary. When I first heard, I'm like, I said this is a tournament that's been around since the 30s, and you're changing the format. What are you doing? And then all of a sudden you look at it and it explodes. And again, after COVID, that really helped them. A lot of people going out there, experiencing it for the first time. Because the Zurich has always been a great tournament. They really kind of set the standard for the PGA and how you entertain outside of golf. Okay, but again, now with the team concept, it really has found its niche within the PGA Tour. All right, I want to touch on baseball before we get out of here. LSU 34-8, 12-6 got run ruled by Northwestern. the other night. Of course, they got Tennessee. It was 13-3 and 7, by the way. If people don't know that, they got Tennessee at the box this weekend. UNO 23-15, 10-11. They're on an 8-game winning streak. They're at Lamar this weekend. Tulane 24-17, 8-7 at ECU. SLU leading the Southland 31-9, 16-5 at HCU this weekend. Your thoughts on college baseball in Louisiana?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, probably nobody around has watched more college baseball than I have in my lifetime. I saw something in Tulane's game against UTSA on Saturday that I've never seen before. Tulane was winning 4-1 going into the bottom of the second inning, and UTSA scored 24 runs in the next 4 innings. I mean, Tulane walked before they recorded an out in the 5th inning. Tulane pitchers had walked 15 guys and hit 4. It was one of the worst implosions I've ever seen on the mound. Having said that, they're about where they were last year. They're going to have to win the conference tournament to get to a regional, but that's where Jay Ullman has excelled. He's won back-to-back tournaments, and when he was interim coach the year before, they made a long run after they just fired Travis Jewett. So they've got that shot. UNO, when Blake Dean resigned before the season, a lot of people thought it was going to be over. I said at the time, we'll find out next year. But this year, he had brought in a pretty good roster. They're a really good hitting team. They've got a terrific two-way player in Bryce Callaway on the mound as a closer, who's ridiculous. I mean, he's hitting over 400 and he's a closer at the same time. They're going to have to win their conference tournament, which that was the one thing Blake Dean was never able to do, and their league is a lot better this year than it's been in the past. LSU, I did find out, hey, they were winning 2-0 before the 1 hour and 40-minute lightning delay the other night. Maybe that had something to do with it, but I saw Northwestern State. They played Tulane in a midweek game this year on a Wednesday when Tulane had played on a Tuesday. Tulane doesn't have pitching depth, and Tulane beat them pretty easily. So that was one of the more shocking scores I've seen, but it won't. And it could, in terms of super regional, LSU wants to get in that range where they host a super regional. They're now the 8th-rated SEC team, like the top 12 teams in the country, 8 are SEC teams. That's no lock for LSU, and that's the only way that a loss like that could end up hurting them.
Oh yeah, they definitely have some work to do. I think they haven't been super impressive early in SEC play, but this weekend is going to be telling. Shout out to the Demons. That was a dominant performance, but LSU's looking ahead to Tennessee, that series in the box is a series a lot of people have had circled for a long time. Last 2 national champions, with Tony Vitello going up against Jay Johnson.
There's a rivalry there.
Oh yeah,
and Tennessee is the one school everybody loves to hate in the SEC because of the way they carry themselves.
There's going to be some bad blood. There's going to be a lot of trash talking outside of Alex Box Stadium. But like with Jay Ullman, Jay Johnson's teams in the past have sometimes gotten off to slow starts and then have turned it on, have played their best baseball at the best possible time. And hopefully for LSU fans, that's the case here. Big series this weekend. Yeah, 2 most knowledgeable, media members we have here in New Orleans and across the state, Mario Jerez and also Guerry Smith. All right, guys. One last comment going forward, and I want to go back to the Saints for a moment. Again, draft round 1. I don't want a player. I just want a position. Defensive line, and I'll even give you a player. I really like Mason Graham from Michigan. If he's on the board, that is somebody who I really think could be a game changer. If he's there, I would run to the podium. Okay. Yes.
What he said.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That was the name I had circled. It's the position they need, and it's a guy that was productive in college and has all the right attributes. 8 tackles in a rivalry game that upset against Ohio State as an interior lineman. Like, that's some good stuff.
I mean, he fills the need immediately. Okay, for them. I just hope he can fall. I doubt he does, but I hope he can fall there. And I had mentioned on Jim Derry's podcast this week, Will Campbell. But to me, it doesn't matter if it's a Will Campbell. If that defensive tackle's not there, offensive lineman, you got to go big. It's got to be a big man draft in the first round, in my opinion.
Fair. If I had to pick one over the other, I agree. But if I had to pick one over the other, I would go D-line. They don't have that game breaker. They don't have the Cam Jordan of the past. You need somebody who could just wreck offensive lines.
And you can't cater to fans when you make picks, but there's a little offensive line fatigue in this.
No, there is.
And people are not going to be happy now again. But that you can't draft that way.
And that's what I hope that they stay with. Look, don't get pushed into a situation where you feel like you got to get that sexy pick to get the fans excited. It's about winning, and you win in the trenches.
Winning excites fans ultimately.
Exactly.
Like if they somehow mended relationships with Derek Carr and then they won this year, fans would actually like him. That's how winning is all that matters.
Winning cures all.
No doubt. Mario Jerez, Guerry Smith, great job. Thanks so much for joining us here on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. There's a QR code on your screen that will take you to the WLAE-TV YouTube channel and my website, ericasher.com. Between, again, WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV2, and Pelican Sports Television, set your DVR. You'll never miss the program. You catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays, 106.7 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Our podcasts are on all podcasting platforms, Anchor, Spotify, you name it, we're there. Also, again, The Ticket has an app, 106.7 The Ticket app. Also, we're available also on the iHeart and TuneIn apps as well. Again, the show is 4 to 6 weekdays. Check it out if you would as well. I want to thank the underwriters who make our show possible. Please support our underwriters, each and every one of those underwriters. Thank you so much for your support of our program. And of course, the production staff here at WLE do a great job. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Thomas Healy, best director on the planet. You know who he is, William Hill. For Guerry Smith, for Mara Jerez, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Randall Park, and I'm a proud supporter of public media. Public media is one of the few things we can all count on. It's free and always there when we need it, providing families with trusted educational resources, delivering life-saving information, or keeping us connected to our communities. Local public television and radio stations are nonprofit organizations dedicated to strengthening the places we call home, but they can't do it alone. Learn more at protectmypublicmedia.org.
Hey, I'm Keith Spiro from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is singer Tank Ball from Tank and the Bangas. Tank, you're known for your amazing hairstyles at Jazz Fest. Is there any way I could possibly replicate one of those hairstyles myself?
You could